Captain Jake Morrison stared at the screen in front of him. The numbers made no sense. His ship, the Star Hunter, had been scanning empty space for 3 days. This was supposed to be routine work. Find rocks with metal. Mark them on the map. Move on to the next system, but the readings showed something impossible. "Commander Kane, come look at this," Jake called across the bridge. Lisa Kane walked over from her station. She was the ship's scientist, always curious about strange things they found in space. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun and her green eyes focused on the screen. "What am I looking at, Captain?" she asked. Jake pointed to the data. "Energy readings from Planet 7 in this system. The computer says it's coming from advanced technology." Lisa frowned. "That can't be right. Our maps show this whole system is empty. No life, no colonies, nothing." "That's what I thought too." Jake switched to another screen. "But look at this. The planet has an atmosphere that's been changed. Someone terraformed it. And these energy patterns," he paused, "they don't match anything in our database." First Officer Ryan Clark joined them. He was a tall man with short brown hair and serious blue eyes. "Sir, we're supposed to report back to base in 6 hours. Command won't like it if we're late." Jake nodded but kept looking at the screen. The energy readings were getting stronger as they got closer to the planet. "Ryan, have you ever seen anything like this?" Ryan studied the data. "No, sir, but those energy levels are huge. Whatever's down there, it's using more power than most space stations." Lisa's eyes went wide. "Captain, look at this." She had been running tests on samples their ship collected from space near the planet. "I'm reading human DNA in the atmosphere." "That's impossible," Ryan said. "There are no human colonies out here. This is the edge of known space." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had been a captain for 15 years. He had seen strange things in space, but this was different. "Lisa, run the test again." She worked at her station for several minutes. When she looked up, her face was pale. "Captain, it's definitely human DNA, but there's something else. The genetic markers are old. Really old." "How old?" Jake asked. 300 years, maybe more." Jake's heart started beating faster. 300 years ago was when the Empire lost contact with the colony ship Pioneer's Dream. Everyone thought it had crashed or been destroyed in space. The loss of 8,000 colonists was still talked about in history classes. "Sir?" Communications Officer Amy Foster called from her station. "I'm picking up artificial signals from the planet. Radio, waves, data transmissions. Someone is definitely down there." Jake looked at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. The smart thing to do was report back to command and let them handle it. But if there were humans down there, humans who had been lost, for 3 centuries, could they really just fly away? "Amy, can you tell what the signals are saying?" he asked. "Not yet, sir. The language sounds like old standard Terran, but I need more time to decode it." Lisa stepped closer to Jake. "Captain, if these are descendants of the Pioneer's Dream, they've been surviving out here for 300 years. Alone. They might need help." Ryan shook his head. "Or they might be dangerous. We don't know what 300 years of isolation could do to people." Jake thought about the energy readings. Whatever was on that planet was using technology far beyond what the Empire had. If these were humans, how had they advanced so far? "Captain," Amy said suddenly, "I'm getting something. On long-range sensors, ships are coming toward us." "Empire ships?" Jake asked. "No, sir. The design is completely unknown, but they're fast. Really fast." Jake watched as 3 sleek vessels appeared on the screen. They were beautiful in a way that Empire ships never were. Smooth curves instead of sharp angles. They moved through space like they were swimming instead of flying. "How fast are they going?" he asked. "Faster than anything in our fleet," Ryan replied. "And Captain, they're not using any propulsion system I recognize." The strange ships formed a triangle around the Star Hunter. Jake waited for weapons to lock onto his ship, but nothing happened. The vessels just stayed there, keeping pace with them. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," Amy reported. "Put it on screen." The face that appeared was human, but somehow different. The woman looked to be in her 30s, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to glow with inner light. When she spoke, her voice was calm and musical. "Greetings, children of Terra. I am Director Kate Phillips of New Eden Station. We have been waiting for you." Jake felt his mouth go dry. "You've been waiting for us?" "We have watched your empire grow among the stars. We knew that one day you would find us." Kate smiled, and there was sadness in her expression. "We are your lost cousins, descendants of the pioneer's dream. We did not die in space as your histories claim. We found something wonderful." Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. "Captain, the energy readings are spiking. There's something massive approaching." On the screen, space seemed to bend and twist. A structure appeared that was so large it made their ship look like a grain of sand. It was a space station, but unlike anything the Empire had ever built. Spires of crystal and metal reached out in perfect geometric patterns. Lights flowed along its surface like living things. "Welcome to New Eden," Kate said. "We have much to show you, much to teach you. But first, you must choose. Will you come aboard as guests, or will you flee back to your empire and pretend you never found us?" Jake looked at his crew. Ryan's hand was near the emergency communication button that would send a signal back to command. Lisa was staring at the station with wonder in her eyes. Amy was recording everything, her fingers moving quickly over her controls. "If we come aboard," Jake said carefully, "what happens then?" Kate's smile grew warmer. "Then you learn the truth about humanity's destiny among the stars. You learn what we have become and what you could become as well." The space station grew larger as they approached. Jake could see ships moving around it, ships that flew without engines. He could see gardens and forests growing on its outer surfaces. This was technology beyond anything he had ever imagined. "Director Phillips," he said finally, "we accept your invitation." As their ship was guided into the station's docking bay, Jake wondered if he had just made the best decision of his life or the worst. Either way, nothing would ever be the same again. The docking bay was nothing like what Jake had expected. Instead of cold metal walls and harsh lights, the space was filled with soft colors and gentle sounds. Water flowed down the walls in patterns that looked like art. Plants grew everywhere, their leaves glowing with soft light. "Captain, the air readings show it's safe to breathe," Lisa said, checking her scanner. "In fact, it's cleaner than the air on most Empire worlds." Jake nodded to his crew. "Ryan, Amy, Lisa, you're with me. The rest of you stay with the ship." They walked down the ramp of the Star Hunter. Jake's boots made soft sounds on the floor, which seemed to be made of some kind of living material. It felt warm and slightly springy under his feet. A group of people waited for them. They all looked human, but Jake could see what Lisa meant about them being different. They were taller than normal humans with perfect posture. Their skin seemed to glow with health. Their eyes were brighter, more alive than any eyes Jake had ever seen. Director Kate Phillips stepped forward. She wore simple clothes and flowing blue fabric, but she moved like royalty. "Welcome to New Eden Station, Captain Morrison. Your arrival marks a historic moment for both our peoples." "How do you know my name?" Jake asked. Kate smiled. "We have been listening to Empire communications for many years. We know much about your ships, your crews, your leaders. We wanted to understand what our cousins had become." A tall man with silver hair joined them. "I am Dr. Sam Rodriguez, Chief Historian of New Eden. Please follow us. There is much to show, you much to explain." They walked through corridors that curved and flowed like rivers. The walls were transparent in places, showing views of space and the planet below. Jake could see cities floating in the clouds, connected by bridges of light. "Those cities," Amy whispered. "How do they stay in the air?" "Gravity control," said a woman who had been walking quietly beside them. She was young, maybe 25, with dark skin and bright gold eyes. "I am Engineer Mary Jackson. We learned to bend gravity the way you bend metal." Ryan stopped walking. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be—" Mary laughed, a sound like music. "Your empire still thinks in terms of burning fuel and pushing against things. We learned to work with the forces of nature instead of fighting them. They entered a large room with a dome ceiling that showed the stars. But these stars moved, swirling in patterns that made Jake feel dizzy. In the center of the room stood a holographic display showing the history of their colony. Dr. Rodriguez touched the display, and images began to flow through the air. Your records say the pioneer's dream was lost. This is not true. We arrived at this world 300 years ago as planned, but we found something your empire could never imagine. The images showed the colony ship landing on a world that looked dead and rocky. Then the view changed, showing strange structures buried beneath the surface. They were made of materials that seemed to shift and change, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. We call them the architects, Dr. Rodriguez continued. They left these installations throughout the galaxy. Each one is a test, a chance for younger species to prove they are ready for something greater. Jake stared at the images. Ready for what? Kate stepped forward. Ready to join the community of evolved species. Ready to move beyond war, beyond hunger, beyond the need to conquer and destroy. The hologram showed the colonists exploring the alien structures. At first they were careful, scared, but slowly they learned to use the technology. The images showed impossible things, machines that created food from nothing, devices that healed any injury in minutes, tools that could change the weather or move mountains. The technology doesn't just give you power, Mary explained. It changes you, makes you better, stronger, smarter, more peaceful, but only if you use it the right way. Lisa was recording everything with her scanner. What do you mean the right way? Dr. Rodriguez smiled sadly. The architect technology only works for those who have moved beyond selfishness. If you try to use it for war, for personal gain, for hurting others, it shuts down completely. It took our people 50 years to learn this lesson. The hologram showed scenes of early conflicts among the colonists. Some had tried to use the alien technology to gain power over others, but the machine simply stopped working for them. Only those who shared, who helped, who worked together could make the technology respond. Over time, we all learned, Kate said. We had to. The technology forced us to become better people. Those who couldn't change, well, they lived normal human lives and died normal human deaths. But their children often could adapt. Jake felt overwhelmed. You're saying this alien technology made you evolve? Not made, Dr. Rodriguez corrected. Allowed. The potential was always there in all humans. The architects just provided the tools to unlock it. Amy was staring at a display showing energy patterns. The power levels we detected from space. Where does all that energy come from? Mary touched a wall, and it became transparent. Beyond it, Jake could see massive structures floating in space around the station. They looked like crystals, but they pulsed with inner light. We learned to tap directly into the fabric of space-time itself, Mary said. Zero-point energy, your scientists call it. The architects showed us how to harvest the power that exists in empty space. Ryan shook his head. Even if that's possible, the technology to build something like this would take thousands of years to develop. Not if you have good teachers, Kate said. The architect installations are more than just tools. They're libraries, schools, guides. They taught us everything we needed to know. But only as fast as we could handle it responsibly. The tour continued. For hours, they saw medical facilities that could regrow entire organs, workshops where materials were built atom by atom, gardens where plants grew in impossible colors and shapes, schools where children learned to manipulate matter with their minds. How many of you are there? Lisa asked. On this station, about 50,000, Dr. Rodriguez replied. On the planet below, 2 million. We have been growing slowly, carefully. The architect technology extends life, makes us healthier, but we still choose to have families at a natural pace. Jake watched children playing in a park inside the station. They moved with the same grace as the adults, but they were laughing and running like normal kids. One child was making flowers bloom just by touching them. Another was lifting small objects without touching them at all. They're born with these abilities, he asked. They develop them as they grow, Kate explained. Each generation is a little more advanced than the last. But they still need love, guidance, teaching. Power without wisdom is dangerous. As they walked back toward the docking bay, Jake's mind was spinning with questions. How had the Empire missed this? How had these people stayed hidden for so long? And most importantly, what did this mean for humanity's future? Director Phillips, he said as they reached the Star Hunter, why did you reveal yourselves to us now? Why not stay hidden? Kate looked sad again. Because we have been watching your empire grow. We see the wars, the hunger, the suffering. We see our cousins destroying planets for resources they don't really need. We hoped that maybe, if we showed you another way, some of you might choose to change. And if we don't? Ryan asked. Dr. Rodriguez answered quietly. Then you will follow the path of every species that fails the architect's test. You will eventually destroy yourselves, and the galaxy will mourn another lost civilization. Jake felt the weight of those words as he looked back at the impossible station. His people, his empire, everything he had known suddenly seemed small and primitive, but also precious, worth saving. What happens now? He asked. Kate smiled. Now, you must choose, Captain Morrison. Will you return to your empire and report what you've found? Will you try to take our technology by force? Or will you help us find another path forward? As Jake looked at his crew, he realized that everything had changed. They could never go back to the way things were before. The only question was what they would do next. Jake could not sleep that night. The crew of the Star Hunter had been given rooms on the station that were more comfortable than anything on Empire ships. The beds seemed to adjust to his body, and the walls showed peaceful scenes of forests and oceans. But his mind would not stop racing. In the morning, Dr. Ben Taylor came to get them. He was the colony's lead scientist, a man who looked 40 but spoke like someone much older and wiser. Director Phillips thought you might want to see the source of everything, Ben said. The place where it all began. They took a shuttle down to the planet's surface. As they flew through the atmosphere, Jake saw the floating cities up close. They were even more beautiful than they had looked from space. Towers of crystal and metal hung in the air like dreams made real. Gardens flowed. Over their edges, waterfalls fell upward into the sky. How do people get between the cities? Amy asked. Watch, Ben said with a smile. A person stepped off the platform of one city and simply floated through the air to another. They moved as easily as if they were swimming, guided by thought alone. Personal gravity control, Ben explained. It takes about 2 years to learn, but every child here can fly by their 10th birthday. They landed near what looked like a mountain, but as they got closer, Jake realized it was not natural. The structure was covered in the same strange symbols they had seen in the holographic display. But these symbols seemed to move and shift when he looked at them directly. This is the primary architect installation, Ben said as they walked toward an opening that had not been there a moment before. It has been teaching us for 300 years and we still discover new things every day. Inside, the installation was vast. Corridors stretched in directions that hurt Jake's mind to follow. Some walls seemed to curve up and become floors. Others looked like they went on forever, even though Jake knew the mountain was not that big. Space works differently in here, Ben explained, noticing Jake's confusion. The architects understood dimensions we can barely imagine. They came to a large chamber filled with floating platforms and streams of light. On each platform stood a person from the colony, but they were not moving. Their eyes were closed, and their faces were peaceful. What are they doing? Lisa asked. Learning, said a voice behind them. They turned to see President Alex Murphy, the leader of the colony. He was a tall man with kind eyes and silver hair. Unlike the others, he looked his age, which Jake guessed was about 60. The installation teaches through direct mental contact, Alex explained. It shows you how to use the technology, but more than that, it shows you why you should use it carefully. Is it safe? Ryan asked, looking worried. Safer than your Empire schools, Alex replied. The installation cannot force knowledge on you. It can only offer it. You must choose to accept each lesson, and you must prove you understand the responsibility that comes with each new ability. Dr. Ben Taylor led them deeper into the installation. The walls around them began to glow, and Jake heard something like music, but not quite. It was beautiful and sad at the same time. The installation is aware of us, Ben said. It knows we have brought visitors. It's curious about you. They entered a room that was completely empty except for a single pedestal in the center. On the pedestal sat what looked like a crystal, but it pulsed with inner light and seemed to be alive. This is the heart of the installation, Ben said. The core intelligence left by the architects. It has been waiting for 300 years to meet other humans. Jake stepped closer, and suddenly his mind was filled with images. He saw the galaxy as it really was, not empty space with scattered worlds, but a vast community of intelligent species. Some were like humans, others were so different he could barely understand what he was seeing. But they all shared something, a way of thinking that was peaceful and wise. Then he saw the dark places in the galaxy, species that had failed the test, that had used their technology for war and conquest until they destroyed themselves. Empty worlds that once held great civilizations. The sadness in the music grew stronger. The architects left these installations on thousands of worlds, Alex said softly. Most species ignore them or try to use them as weapons. Very few pass the test. Lisa was staring at the crystal with tears in her eyes. I can feel it, she whispered. It's so lonely. It's been waiting so long for someone to understand. Amy stepped forward. What does it want from us? The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly they all heard a voice in their minds. It was not words, but ideas and feelings that somehow became thoughts they could understand. The voice spoke of hope and fear, hope that humanity might be ready to join the greater community of evolved species. Fear that they would choose the path of destruction like so many others before them. It wants to help us, Jake said, the understanding coming suddenly. But it can't force us to change. The choice has to be ours. Ben nodded. That's the key to everything. The technology only works if you choose to use it for good. If you try to use it for selfish reasons, for hurting others, it simply stops working. They spent hours in the installation, learning about the galaxy's hidden history. The architects had been the first species to evolve beyond physical existence. Before they left this dimension, they had seeded the galaxy with tests and teachers, hoping that younger species would learn from their example. How many species have passed the test? Ryan asked. 47 over the past million years, Alex replied. Most species destroy themselves within 1,000 years of developing space travel. The test comes at the moment when a species is advanced enough to either transcend their nature or destroy themselves with their own power. When they finally left the installation, Jake's head was spinning with new knowledge. He understood now why the colony had developed the way it had. The architect technology did not just give them tools, it forced them to become worthy of those tools. President Murphy, Jake said as they walked back to the shuttle, what would happen if the Empire found out about this place? Alex looked sad. Your Empire would try to take the technology by force. They would send fleets, armies, scientists. They would want to use our power to conquer their enemies, to control more worlds. And the installations would shut down, Ben added. The technology would become useless metal and crystal. The architects designed it that way. Power without wisdom destroys itself. During the flight back to the station, Jake was quiet. He understood the impossible choice he was facing. If he reported back to the Empire, he would be condemning both civilizations. The Empire would try to take what they could not understand, and the colony would be forced to defend itself. But if he did not report back, the Empire would send other ships to look for them. Eventually, someone would find New Eden, and the confrontation would happen anyway. There might be another way, Lisa said quietly, as if she could read his thoughts. What do you mean? Jake asked. What if some people from the Empire came here voluntarily? What if they could learn the same way the original colonists did? Amy looked up from her notes. The installation could teach them. Only if they were ready to change, Alex said. The process takes years and not everyone can handle it. Some people are too set in their old ways of thinking. Ryan was looking out at the floating cities below them. Captain, what are we going to do? Command is expecting our report. Jake knew Ryan was right. They could not hide on the station forever. Soon the Empire would send ships to look for them, and when that happened, everything would change. I don't know, Jake said honestly. But I know we cannot go back to the way things were. What we have seen here, what we have learned, it changes everything. As they docked at the station, Jake realized that they were running out of time. Soon he would have to make the choice that would determine the future of both human civilizations. He just hoped he would make the right one. The alarm started screaming at dawn. Jake jumped out of bed and ran to the nearest window. In the distance, he could see lights in space. Ships. Lots of them. The Empire had come looking for the Star Hunter. Amy's voice came over the station's communication system. Captain Morrison, please report to the command center immediately. Jake ran through the corridors, his heart pounding. When he reached the command center, he found Director Phillips, President Murphy, and his entire crew already there. On the main screen, he could see what had triggered the alarms. A full Empire battle fleet hung in space near the planet. Heavy cruisers, 4 destroyers, and at the center the massive flagship Warrior's Pride. Jake knew that ship. It belonged to Admiral Nick Davis, one of the Empire's most aggressive commanders. They arrived 20 minutes ago, Kate said, her voice calm despite the danger. They're demanding that we surrender immediately and hand over all our technology. How did they find us so fast? Jake asked. Ryan looked uncomfortable. Sir, our ship has an automatic beacon. If we don't report in every 72 hours, it sends our location back to command. Jake felt sick. He had been so caught up in what they had discovered that he had forgotten about basic Empire procedures. Now his mistake might destroy everything. Admiral Davis is sending a message, Amy reported from her station. The screen changed to show a man in his 50s with gray hair and cold blue eyes. Admiral Davis wore his uniform like armor, every button perfect, every metal polished. This is Admiral Nick Davis of the Terran Empire. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Kate stepped forward. Admiral Davis, I am Director Kate Phillips of New Eden. We welcome peaceful contact with our cousins from the Empire, but we cannot allow our technology to be taken by force. Davis's face grew red with anger. You have no choice in the matter. You are citizens of the Empire and you will obey Empire law. Prepare to surrender your weapons and your leaders. We have no weapons in the way you understand them, Kate replied, calmly. And we are not citizens of your empire. We are free people who have chosen our own path. Jake watched the Admiral's face and knew what was coming. Davis was not a man who accepted defiance. He was known throughout the fleet for his belief that superior firepower solved all problems. You have 1 hour to comply, Davis said. After that, we will take what we need by force. The transmission ended, and the command center fell silent. Jake looked around at the faces of the colonists. They seemed sad but not afraid. Even the children in the room appeared calm. What are you going to do? Jake asked Kate. What we must, she replied. General Peter White, please activate the defensive systems. A man Jake had not met before stepped forward. Despite his title of general, he wore simple clothes and had kind eyes. Director, are you certain? Once we show them our capabilities, there will be no going back. They have chosen their path, President Murphy said quietly. We cannot let them take our technology. Too many worlds would suffer if the Empire had access to architect power. Jake felt torn in two. These people were about to fight his empire, but he understood why. He had seen what the technology could do in the right hands. In the wrong hands, it would be a disaster. Captain, Amy said, Admiral Davis is sending another message. This one is for you specifically. Jake's image appeared on the screen next to the Admiral. Davis smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Captain Morrison, I'm sure you've had an interesting few days playing tourist, but now it's time to remember your duty to the Empire. You will return to your ship immediately and assist in the Occupation of this station. Jake looked around the room. His crew was watching him, waiting to see what he would choose. Lisa had tears in her eyes. Ryan looked scared but determined. Amy was recording everything as always. "Admiral," Jake said slowly, "I don't think you understand what you're dealing with here." "I understand perfectly," Davis replied. "A group of rebels with stolen technology. Nothing our fleet can't handle." "Sir, these people are not rebels. They're our cousins, descendants of the pioneer's dream, and their technology is beyond anything the Empire has ever seen." Davis laughed. "Captain, you've been fooled by parlor tricks and fake displays. No human civilization could develop such advanced technology in only 300 years. Jake realized that the Admiral would never listen to reason. He had made up his mind before he even arrived. "Admiral, I respectfully request that you give us more time to negotiate." "Negative, Captain. You have 30 minutes to return to your ship. Anyone who remains on that station will be considered a traitor to the Empire." The transmission ended. Jake looked at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for his decision. "Captain," Ryan said quietly, "what are your orders?" Before Jake could answer, Amy stepped forward. "Sir, I request permission to remain on the station." Jake was shocked. "Amy, that would be desertion. They'll court-martial you." "I don't care," she said, her voice strong. "I've seen what these people have built. I've seen what humanity could become. I can't go back to the old way." Lisa nodded. "I agree with Amy. Captain, I want to stay too." Jake felt his heart breaking. His crew, his friends, were choosing to abandon everything they had known. But he understood why. He felt the same pull, the same desire to be part of something better. "Sir," Ryan said, "I'll follow your orders, whatever you decide. But I think you should know that half the fleet is asking questions. Word has gotten out about what we found here. A lot of people are wondering if there might be another way." General White approached Jake. "Captain, your admiral is about to make a terrible mistake. Our defensive systems could disable his entire fleet without harming a single person. But once we do that, there will be no peace between our peoples." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "We've been monitoring Empire communications. There are factions in your government that want war. They see us as a threat to their power. If we demonstrate our capabilities, they'll use it as an excuse to mobilize everything they have." Kate placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. "Captain Morrison, we have a proposal. We know we cannot hide any longer. Your Empire will keep sending ships until they find us, but perhaps some of your people are ready to make a different choice." "What kind of choice?" Jake asked. President Murphy stepped forward. "We're prepared to establish contact colonies, places where Empire citizens can come to learn our ways, to undergo the changes necessary to use architect technology. It would take years, maybe decades, but eventually, we could reunite our species." "And those who don't want to change?" Ryan asked. "They would be free to maintain their own civilization," Kate replied. "We have no desire to conquer or control. We only want to offer another path." Jake looked at the screen showing the Empire fleet. Admiral Davis was preparing to attack people who could have been his greatest teachers. The stupidity of it made him angry. "There's something else," General White said quietly. "We've detected ships moving throughout Empire space. Other fleets are mobilizing. Your government is preparing for a full-scale war, whether we want one or not." Jake realized that time had run out. In a few minutes, Admiral Davis would attack and everything would change forever. He had to make a choice that would affect not just his crew, but the future of humanity itself. "Amy," he said finally, "send a message on all Empire frequencies. Tell them what we found here. Tell them about the choice they're about to make." As Amy worked at her station, Jake looked out at the battle fleet preparing to attack. Soon, he would find out if humanity was ready to take the next step in its evolution, or if it would choose to remain trapped in its old patterns of fear and violence. Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Broadcasting on all Empire frequencies, Captain. Every ship in the fleet will receive this." Jake stepped in front of the camera. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Star Hunter. I'm speaking to every soldier, every officer, every person serving in Admiral Davis's fleet. You deserve to know the truth about what we found here." On the screen showing the Empire fleet, Jake could see ships moving into attack formation. Admiral Davis was not waiting for negotiations. "The people on this station are not rebels or terrorists," Jake continued. "They are our family, descendants of the lost colony ship Pioneer's Dream. For 300 years they have been building something incredible. They have found a way for humanity to become something better." Amy gestured to him. The broadcast was reaching every ship. She could see communication lights flashing throughout the fleet as Jake's message spread. "These people have technology that could end hunger, end war, end suffering. But it only works if we choose to use it wisely. If we try to take it by force, if we use it to hurt others, it will stop working forever." Admiral Davis's face appeared on another screen. He was furious. "Morrison, you are ordered to stop this broadcast immediately. You are committing treason." Jake ignored him and continued speaking to the fleet. "In a few minutes, Admiral Davis is going to order you to attack this station. He believes that superior firepower can solve any problem. But you've seen the readings from this place. These people have technology that makes our weapons look like toys." On the tactical display, Jake could see that the Empire ships were hesitating. Some had stopped moving into attack positions. Others were sending messages back and forth. "They could destroy our entire fleet without killing a single person," Jake said. "But they don't want to fight us. They want to help us. They want to show us what humanity can become when we stop fighting each other and start working together." General White stepped beside Jake. "Admiral Davis, this is General Peter White of New Eden Defense Command. We are activating our defensive systems now. Please withdraw your fleet to a safe distance." The space around the station began to shimmer. Streams of light flowed out from the crystal spires, connecting with devices that Jake had not noticed before. The very air seemed to hum with power. "You have 10 seconds to surrender," Admiral Davis broadcast to the station. "After that, we open fire." "Sir," came a voice from one of the Empire ships, "we're reading massive energy buildups from the station. Recommend we withdraw to minimum safe distance." "Negative," Davis replied. "All ships, prepare to fire." Jake watched in horror as the Empire fleet powered up their weapons. Thousands of people were about to make a choice that would change everything. "Wait," a new voice said over the fleet communications. It was Captain Lucy Adams of the cruiser Star's Edge. "Admiral, I'm reading something impossible here. The station is generating a gravity field around our entire fleet." Jake felt the station shudder slightly. Through the windows, he could see space itself bending around the Empire ships. They were caught in bubbles of twisted gravity, unable to move or fire. Their weapons. "All Empire vessels are now contained," General White announced calmly. "Your weapons have been disabled, but your ships and crews are unharmed. You are free to leave at any time, but you cannot attack us." Admiral Davis was screaming orders, but nothing happened. His ships hung in space like insects caught in crystal. "This is impossible," Davis said, his voice shaking with rage and fear. "No, Admiral," Kate's voice came over the communications. "This is just the beginning of what's possible when you stop thinking in terms of war and conquest." Jake turned back to the camera. "Everyone in the fleet can see what just happened. These people disabled our weapons without hurting anyone. They could have destroyed us, but they chose mercy. This is what humanity can become if we're willing to change." Amy was monitoring communications across the fleet. "Captain, I'm getting reports from multiple ships. Crews are asking their captains what they should do. Some are requesting permission to send delegations to the station." "Admiral Davis," Kate said, "we're prepared to release your ships and allow you to return to Empire space. But we're also willing to accept any of your people who want to learn our ways." "I will never surrender to rebels and traitors," Davis replied. But Jake could see that not everyone in the fleet agreed with their admiral. Ship after ship was requesting permission to send representatives to the station. Some crews were openly questioning their orders. "Captain Morrison," came a voice from the cruiser Brave Dawn. "This is Captain Doug Hayes. Request permission to dock with the station for diplomatic talks." Admiral Davis cut in immediately. "Permission denied. All ships will return to formation and prepare for extended siege operations. Sir, Captain Adams said carefully, with respect, our weapons are completely useless. We can't even move our ships. Maybe we should consider other options. Jake smiled as he watched more and more ship captains openly disagreeing with Davis. The Admiral was losing control of his fleet. People of the Empire, Jake said, returning to his broadcast, you have a choice to make. You can follow Admiral Davis back to the old ways of fear and fighting. Or you can stay here and learn what your cousins have discovered. You can be part of humanity's next step forward. Amy held up 5 fingers, then 4, then 3. She was counting down something. What's happening? Jake asked. Long-range sensors are picking up more ships, she replied. But these aren't Empire vessels. On the main screen, new contacts appeared. Ships unlike anything Jake had ever seen. They moved through space like living things, their hulls shifting and flowing. Some looked like crystal formations. Others resembled flowers or sea creatures. Representatives of the galactic community, Kate announced with a smile. They've been watching this encounter, waiting to see what choice humanity would make. Jake stared as dozens of alien vessels took positions around both fleets. Beautiful, impossible ships that made even the advanced technology of New Eden look simple. The galactic community has decided, President Murphy said. Humanity has shown that at least some of its people are ready to evolve beyond their current limitations. We are being formally invited to join the Confederation of Evolved Species. Admiral Davis was no longer speaking. His ship hung silent, in its gravity bubble, surrounded by wonders beyond his understanding. But the invitation comes with conditions, Kate continued. We cannot force this evolution on anyone. Those who choose to remain with the old ways of thinking must be allowed to do so. The Empire can continue to exist, but it cannot interfere with those who choose to grow beyond it. Over the next several hours, Jake watched as ship after ship from the Empire fleet requested permission to dock with New Eden Station. Some crews came to learn. Others just wanted to see the impossible made real. A few, including Admiral Davis, chose to return to Empire space and pretend none of this had ever happened. Jake found himself standing on an observation deck with his crew. Amy and Lisa had already decided to stay and begin the long process of learning to use architect technology. Ryan was torn, but Jake could see in his eyes that he would stay too. What about you, Captain? Kate asked, joining them at the window. Will you return to the Empire or stay with us? Jake looked out at the mix of human and alien ships floating peacefully in space. For the first time in years, he felt hope for humanity's future. I think, he said slowly, that someone needs to go back to the Empire and help other people make this choice. There are millions of humans who have never heard of New Eden, who don't know that another way is possible. Kate nodded approvingly. We've been hoping someone would volunteer for that mission. The Empire needs teachers, people who can help others understand what we've learned here. As Jake prepared to return to his ship, he realized that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy, no longer trapped by its own limitations. The path forward would not be easy, but for the first time it seemed possible. He looked back at New Eden Station, at the floating cities and the impossible technology, at the alien ships welcoming humanity into a larger community. Then he looked ahead to the long journey home, where he would help his people choose their own destiny among the stars. The future was waiting, and humanity was finally ready to meet it. The lights on the bridge of the New Horizon flickered again. Captain Jake Morrison rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the damage report on his screen. 50 years had passed since the Terra incident, and this old ship was showing its age. Just like everything else human these days. Captain, we're approaching the boundary, said Lisa Harper from her seat at navigation. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. Behind them lay everything they had ever known. Ahead was nothing but empty space and whatever scraps of humanity had survived out there. The Galactic Council had been very clear 50 years ago. Humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too violent for civilized space. They had to go. All of them. Every colony, every station, every ship. The great species of the galaxy, The proud Zephyrians with their crystal cities, the cold Vorthan collective with their perfect logic, had voted together. Humanity was banished. Jake remembered the stories his grandfather told him. How the human ambassadors had tried to explain what really happened at Terra, how they begged for another chance, how the council members just looked at them with disgust and fear. The decision was final. Humans had 1 year to leave all council space, and they could never return. Tom, how are the engines holding up? Jake called to the engineering station. Tom. Bradley looked up from his screens with a grim smile. They're running on hope and spare parts, Captain, but they'll get us where we need to go. Where they needed to go was the quarantine zone, a vast empty region at the edge of known space where humans were supposed to stay forever. Jake had been ordered to take the New Horizon there by the last human government before it collapsed. His mission was simple: find any surviving human settlements and help them however he could. Dr. Kate Reynolds sat at the science station studying long-range sensor readings. She was younger than the rest of the crew, born after the exile began. Sometimes Jake envied her. She had never seen Earth's blue skies or walked through the great space stations that humans once built. But she also never felt the pain of losing it all. Captain? Kate said suddenly, her voice excited. I'm picking up something strange. Jake moved to her station. The sensor display showed what should have been empty space. According to all the maps, this region had nothing but asteroids and dead worlds. But Kate's readings showed something else. Those energy signatures, she whispered. They're not natural. Lisa checked her navigation charts again. We're definitely in the quarantine zone now, Captain, but this can't be right. On the main screen, space looked empty and black. But as they flew deeper into the zone, small objects began to appear. At first, Jake thought they were just space rocks. Then he realized what he was seeing. Ships. Dozens of them. They were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Some looked like they had been built from salvaged parts of old human vessels. Others were completely new designs that seemed to bend and flow like living things. All of them were clearly human-made, but far more advanced than anything humans had possessed 50 years ago. Captain, Tom said, his voice shaking slightly. I'm reading power levels that shouldn't be possible. These ships are running on technology we don't have. Before Jake could respond, his communication system came alive. A voice spoke in clear English, but with an accent he didn't recognize. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Ryan Clark of the Shadow Fleet. State your identity and purpose. Jake stared at the communication panel. Shadow Fleet. He had never heard of any Shadow Fleet. According to everything he knew, the human military had been disbanded after the exile. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the New Horizon, he replied carefully. We're carrying out orders from the last Earth government. We're looking for human survivors. There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again, warmer this time. Captain Morrison, welcome to the Outer Reach. Please follow the escort ships to Haven Station. There are some things you need to see. 2 sleek vessels appeared on either side of the New Horizon. They moved with a grace that made Jake's old ship feel like a flying brick. As they traveled deeper into the asteroid field, more structures became visible. What Jake had thought were dead rocks were actually hidden bases and shipyards. My God, Lisa whispered. How many people are out here? Kate was studying her sensors with growing amazement. Captain, I'm reading multiple space stations, mining operations, and what looks like farms. Actual farming platforms in space. This isn't just survival, this is a civilization. As they approached Haven Station, Jake felt his breath catch. The station was massive, easily 10 times larger than anything humans had built before the exile. It looked like a piece of space junk from the outside, but Jake could see through the disguise. Underneath the fake rust and debris was advanced technology that gleamed with power. Docking bay doors opened to receive them, and Jake guided his ship inside. The docking bay was clean and efficient, filled with ships that showed design principles he had never seen before. Human crews moved with purpose and confidence, wearing uniforms that bore no resemblance to the old Earth military. As Jake and his crew stepped off their ship, a tall woman in a crisp blue uniform approached them. Her hair was gray, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Captain Morrison, I'm Director Helen Foster. Welcome to What's Left of Humanity. Or should I say, what humanity has become. Jake looked around the docking bay in wonder. Director, how is this possible? We were told all human settlements were destroyed or abandoned. Helen smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Jake's heart race with hope for the first time in years. Captain, the Galactic Council made one very big mistake when they exiled us. They thought they were getting rid of humanity's problems. Instead, they gave us the freedom to become something much more dangerous than they ever imagined. Come with me. There are 50 years of history you need to catch up on. As they walked through corridors filled with busy people and advanced technology, Jake realized that everything he thought he knew about humanity's fate was wrong. They hadn't just survived their exile, they had thrived. And now, looking at the confident faces around him, Jake began to wonder what else the galaxy didn't know about what humans had been doing in the dark. The exile was supposed to be humanity's end. Instead, it had been their beginning. 3 years had passed since Jake Morrison first laid eyes on Haven Station. Now he stood in the command center, watching dozens of screens showing human activity across the galaxy. He still couldn't believe how much he had been wrong about humanity's fate. Director Helen Foster walked up beside him, carrying a cup of coffee that smelled better than anything Jake had tasted in decades. She had aged well during her time in exile, and her gray hair now showed streaks of silver that caught the light from the displays. Hard to believe, isn't it, Jake? She said, sipping her coffee. When the council threw us out, they thought we would just disappear, hide in some corner and slowly die out. Jake nodded, still staring at the screens. Each one showed a different human settlement. Some were built inside hollow asteroids. Others floated freely in space, disguised as space junk. A few were actually built on planets that the council had marked as worthless. How many are we now? Jake asked. Last count was just over 200 million, Helen replied. We've got 347 major settlements, and that doesn't count the mobile fleets or the research stations. Jake shook his head in amazement. When humanity was exiled, less than 50 million people had made it out of council space alive. Now they had quadrupled their numbers while living in secret. The birth rate has been incredible, Helen continued. Turns out when people have hope for the future, they want to build families, and we've been very good at giving people hope. Alex Turner approached them, holding a data pad filled with intelligence reports. As Chief Intelligence Officer for the Outer Reach Collective, Alex knew more about what was happening in council space than most council members did. Helen, Jake, you need to see this, Alex said, his voice excited. We've been monitoring council communications for months now, and things are getting bad for them. Jake took the data pad and read through the reports. Economic problems were spreading through council space. Several member species were having trouble feeding their populations. Trade disputes were becoming more common, and some worlds were talking about leaving the council entirely. The Zephyrians are having the worst problems, Alex explained. Their crystal cities require massive amounts of energy to maintain, but their power sources are failing. They've been asking other council members for help, but everyone is dealing with their own problems. Helen smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. 50 years ago, they had everything they needed: resources, territory, trade partners. Now look at them. Jake continued reading. The reports showed that the Vorthan Collective was facing rebellion on several of their worlds. Their perfect logic systems couldn't solve problems that required creativity and flexibility. Species that had been happy under council rule were now questioning whether the old ways still worked. There's more, Alex said, pulling out another data pad. We've been in contact with some of the unhappy worlds. Quietly, of course. They don't know they're talking to humans, but they're definitely interested in alternatives to council membership. Before Jake could respond, a young pilot burst into the command center. Sam Davis was barely 25, but he had already proven himself as one of their best scouts. His face was flushed with excitement. Director Foster, Sam said breathlessly. You have to see what I found. Sam activated a holographic display in the center of the room. The image showed an ancient artifact, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. I discovered this in the Kepler sector, hidden inside what we thought was a dead comet, Sam explained. But it's not dead. It's been waiting. Dr. Kate Reynolds had joined them, and she studied the artifact with growing interest. Over the past 3 years, she had become their chief expert on alien technology and history. These symbols, Kate said slowly, they're not from any known council species, but they're definitely artificial. Someone made this. Sam nodded eagerly. That's not the best part. When I got close to it, the artifact activated. It started transmitting coordinates. The holographic display changed, showing star maps with several locations marked in pulsing red light. Jake recognized some of the areas. They were all regions that the council had declared forbidden or dangerous. 12 locations total, Sam continued. All of them in areas where no council ships are allowed to go, just like the quarantine zone where we live. Helen studied the star map carefully. Alex, have we ever had reports of other species being exiled by the council? Alex pulled up historical records on his datapad. Actually, yes. Over the past 500 years, at least 6 different species have been declared incompatible with galactic civilization and banished from council. Space. We always assumed they died out. Kate's eyes lit up with understanding. What if they didn't die out? What if they survived just like we did? The command center fell silent as everyone considered the implications. If other exiled species had survived and built their own hidden civilizations, humanity might not be alone in their opposition to the council. Sam, Helen said finally, how fast can you prepare your ship for a long-range mission? Give me 6 hours, Sam replied instantly. Alex, I want everything we have on these exiled species. Their capabilities, their last known locations, everything. Already on it, Alex said, his fingers flying over his datapad. Jake looked at the star map again, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. Helen, if we make contact with these other exiles, we're not just talking about humanity anymore. We're talking about building an alliance. Helen nodded slowly. The council threw us all away because they thought we were problems they didn't want to deal with. Maybe it's time to show them what happens when all their problems decide to work together. Kate was still studying the artifact data. There's something else. The technology in this artifact is more advanced than anything the council has. If the species that built it are still alive, then we might have allies who are stronger than our enemies, Helen finished. The screens around the command center continued to show human settlements across the galaxy, but now Jake saw them differently. They weren't just hiding places anymore. They were the foundation of something bigger, something that could challenge the most powerful force in the galaxy. Sam was already heading for the door, eager to begin his mission. Director, which coordinates should I investigate first? Helen looked at the star map one more time, then pointed to the closest location. Start there. But Sam, remember, we don't know what we're going to find. These species have been in exile. Even longer than we have, they might not be friendly. Understood, Sam said with a grin. But if they hate the council as much as we do, that's a good start. As Sam left to prepare his ship, Jake realized that everything was about to change again. For 50 years, humanity had grown in secret, building strength in the darkness. Now, they were about to discover if they were truly alone in their struggle, or if the galaxy held other forgotten peoples who remembered what it felt like to be cast aside. The Outer Reach Collective was about to become something much larger, and the Galactic Council had no idea what was coming. Sam Davis gripped the controls of his scout ship as he approached the Kepler void. 2 months had passed since he first found the ancient artifact, and now he was following its coordinates into the darkest region of space he had ever seen. Behind him, Captain Morrison's ship and Dr. Reynolds' research vessel followed at a safe distance. The void looked empty on all sensors, but Sam knew better than to trust appearances. Humans had learned to hide their settlements well, and if other exiled species had survived, they would have learned the same tricks. Sam, are you picking up anything? Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. Nothing yet, Captain. But that doesn't mean there's nothing here. Sam activated the special beacon that Kate Reynolds had built, based on the artifact's technology. If anyone was listening, they would know that the visitors came in peace and shared a common enemy with the council. Minutes passed in silence. Then, Sam's sensors exploded with activity. Ships were appearing from nowhere, materializing out of what had seemed like empty space. They were massive, built like fortress ships with thick armor and heavy weapons. Their design was completely alien, but Sam could see the practical intelligence behind it. A deep voice spoke over the communication channel, using words that Sam's translator computer struggled to understand. Unknown vessels, you carry the beacon of the old enemies. State your purpose or be destroyed. Morrison took over the communication. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Outer Reach Collective. We received coordinates from an ancient artifact. We believe we share a common history with you. There was a long pause. Then the alien voice spoke again, this time in clearer language. Humans. We remember your species from council records. You were exiled for the same crimes they accused us of. I am War Leader Ironheart of the Ashanti Remnant. Follow our ships, but attempt no hostile actions. The alien vessels formed an escort around the human ships, guiding them toward what looked like a dead moon. As they got closer, Sam realized the moon was hollow. The entrance to a massive underground city opened before them, and they flew inside. Ashanti City was built for war. Every structure looked like it could withstand attack, and armed warriors watched from defensive positions as the human ships landed. The Ashanti themselves were tall and powerful, with skin that looked like it was made of metal and eyes that glowed with inner fire. Ironheart met them at the landing platform. She was older than the other Ashanti, with scars that told stories of many battles. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of exile. So the humans survived their banishment, she said, studying Morrison carefully. The council told us you had all died. They said your species was too weak to survive in the outer darkness. Dr. Reynolds stepped forward, carrying translation, equipment, and samples of human technology. We survived by adapting and growing stronger. From what we can see, you did the same. Ironheart laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Stronger, yes, but not strong enough to reclaim our homeworld. For 300 years we have planned our return. For 300 years we have built weapons and ships, but we are too few, and the council is too powerful. Morrison nodded with understanding. That's why we're here. We believe that working together, all the exiled species might be able to accomplish what none of us could do alone. The Ashanti leader studied the humans for a long moment. Then she gestured for them to follow her deeper into the city. As they walked, she explained how her people had survived. When the council cast us out, they expected us to fight each other and destroy ourselves. Instead, we became united. Every Ashanti now serves the same goal, to return home and reclaim what was stolen from us. Kate Reynolds was taking notes on everything she saw. The Ashanti technology was impressive but focused entirely on military applications. They had built the perfect war machine, but they lacked the numbers to use it effectively. Their next destination was the Veil Nebula, where the artifact's coordinates pointed to another exiled species. The journey took several days, and during that time Ironheart traveled with them aboard Morrison's ship. Tell me about these other coordinates, she said one evening as they shared a meal. How many species do you think survived their exile? We don't know, Morrison admitted, but if the artifact is right, there could be several others out there. When they reached the Veil Nebula, the first contact was completely different. No ships appeared to challenge them. Instead, a voice simply began speaking in their minds. Welcome, travelers from distant worlds. We are the Echoing Minds. We have been waiting for you. Dr. Reynolds gasped and grabbed her head. They're telepaths. I can feel them in my thoughts, but they're not trying to hurt us. A figure materialized on the bridge, but it wasn't really there. It was a projection created directly in their minds. The being called itself Node Prime, and it spoke without moving its mouth. We were exiled because the Council feared our ability to share thoughts across space. They said we were violating the privacy of other species. But we only wanted to understand and communicate. Ironheart was uncomfortable with the mental contact, but she forced herself to remain calm. Can you tell us about the Council's current activities? Node Prime's projection smiled. We have been watching them for centuries. Their thoughts are loud and easy to read when they are afraid or angry. And lately, they have been both very afraid and very angry. The information that Node Prime shared was incredible. The echoing minds could sense the thoughts and emotions of every council member across vast distances. They knew about political disputes, military weaknesses, and economic problems that the council tried to keep secret. The council is not as strong as they pretend to be, Node Prime explained. Many of their member species are unhappy. Some are already looking for alternatives to council membership. Morrison felt a spark of hope. Would you be willing to share this information with us? And would you consider joining an alliance of exiled species? We have been alone for so long, Node Prime replied, and for the first time, the projection showed emotion. Yes, we will join your alliance, and we will help you contact the other exiled species. When they returned to Haven Station, Director Helen Foster listened to their reports with growing excitement. The command center had been expanded to accommodate representatives from both the Ashanti Remnant and the Echoing Minds. Colonel Ben Wright, their chief military strategist, studied the intelligence data that Node Prime had provided. This changes everything, he said. The Council isn't unbeatable. They have weaknesses we can exploit. Helen stood before a holographic display showing all the known exile coordinates. We're not just talking about revenge anymore. We're talking about offering something better. A new kind of galactic community where species aren't cast out for being different. Ironheart slammed her fist on the table. The Council destroyed our homes and scattered our people. They deserve to face our wrath. They do, Morrison agreed. But what if we could make them irrelevant instead? What if we offered their member species something better than what the Council provides? Node Prime's mental voice reached all of them. There are others who think as you do. Council species who are tired of the old ways. Young Sam Davis could make contact with them. Sam, who had been quiet during most of the meeting, suddenly looked up. You want me to go into council space? That's incredibly dangerous, Helen smiled. Sam, you've already proven you can find things that are supposed to be impossible to find. Now we need you to find something even more valuable. Allies among our former enemies. As the meeting continued, Jake Morrison realized they were no longer planning just to survive in exile. They were planning to change the entire galaxy. The forgotten species were about to remind the Council that some problems don't just go away when you try to ignore them. They grow stronger in the dark. Sam Davis pulled his trader's cap low over his eyes as he walked through the crowded marketplace on Mindor Prime. 6 months had passed since he began his most dangerous mission, operating deep inside Council space under a false identity. To anyone watching, he looked like just another freelance cargo hauler trying to make a living. But Sam was much more than that. Hidden in his ship's cargo hold were samples of human technology that could revolutionize how the galaxy did business. His job was to find the right people to share it with, people who were tired of the Council's endless rules and restrictions. The Mindorian trade houses controlled most of the commerce in this sector, but they were growing frustrated with Council regulations. Every shipment had to be approved by 3 different agencies. Every trade agreement needed permits that took months to obtain. The bureaucracy was killing their profits. Sam's contact was waiting for him in a small restaurant that served traditional Mindorian food. Trade Minister Velkoth was a middle-aged alien with blue skin and 4 arms, perfect for handling multiple tasks at once. He had agreed to meet with Sam after hearing rumors of new technologies that could bypass Council trade restrictions. You claim to have something that can help us, Velkoth said quietly, his voice barely audible over the noise of other diners. The Council has spies everywhere. If they discover we are even talking about this. Sam reached into his bag and pulled out a small device that looked like an ordinary data pad. This communication system can't be monitored by Council technology. It uses quantum encryption that their sensors can't detect. Velkoth's eyes widened as he examined the device. This is impossible. Council science says such technology cannot exist. Council science is 50 years behind what's actually possible, Sam replied with a smile. There are entire civilizations out there developing technology, while the Council argues about regulations. Over the next hour, Sam showed Velkoth other innovations, manufacturing techniques that could produce goods faster and cheaper than council methods, transportation systems that could move cargo without requiring council permits, agricultural technologies that could feed populations with half the resources. "Who are you really?" Velkoth asked finally. "These technologies are too advanced to come from some random trader." Sam had prepared for this question. "I represent a group of independent species who have been developing these innovations outside council space. We're looking for partners who are ready to try something different." Velkoth was quiet for a long time, thinking about the implications. Finally, he leaned forward. "What do you want in return?" "Access to your trade networks, raw materials, and most importantly, discretion. The council can't know about this until we're ready." The trade minister nodded slowly. "I'll need to discuss this with the other house leaders, but if your technology works as well as you claim, we might be very interested in this partnership." 3 weeks later, Sam was on Thermax, the industrial center of the Gamma sector. The planet's factories produced most of the manufactured goods used by council worlds, but the workers were unhappy. Council production quotas were impossible to meet, and the penalties for failure were severe. Chief Engineer Maya Collins had been working undercover in the factories for 2 months, posing as a maintenance specialist. She had built relationships with local supervisors who were desperate for solutions to their production problems. "The new assembly techniques are working perfectly," Maya reported to Sam during a secret meeting in an abandoned warehouse. "We've increased production by 30% while using 20% less energy. The local managers are calling it a miracle." Sam nodded with satisfaction. "How are they handling the secrecy?" "Better than expected. Everyone here hates the quotas so much that they're willing to try anything. As long as we keep delivering results, they'll keep quiet about where the improvements are coming from." Meanwhile, back on Haven Station, Communications Officer Pete Johnson was coordinating with a growing network of sympathetic individuals across council space. His job was the most dangerous of all, maintaining contact with people who could be executed for treason if they were discovered. "We've got contacts on 47 different worlds now," Pete reported to Director Foster during their weekly briefing. "Teachers, engineers, doctors, even some military officers. They're all tired of the council's corruption and incompetence." Helen Foster studied the intelligence reports that were flowing in from across the galaxy. "What about the Zephyrians? Any luck making contact with their dissidents?" "Actually, yes," Pete replied with excitement. "We've been approached by someone who calls themselves the Benefactor. They claim to be high-ranking Zephyrian nobility who wants to overthrow their own government." "That sounds too good to be true," Helen said suspiciously. "Maybe, but the intelligence they've provided has been completely accurate. They knew about council fleet movements a week before they happened. They warned us about security sweeps that could have caught our people." In her research facility, Dr. Kate Reynolds was making the most important discovery of all. Using historical records obtained through their spy network, she had uncovered the truth about the Terra incident that led to humanity's exile. "It was all a lie," Kate told Captain Morrison as she showed him the evidence. "The Terra incident wasn't caused by human aggression. It was a false flag operation designed by hardline council members to justify getting rid of us." Morrison stared at the documents in disbelief. "Why would they do that?" "Because we were asking too many questions. Human diplomats had discovered massive corruption in the council government, food shipments being diverted to wealthy worlds while poor planets starved, military contracts being awarded to companies owned by council members' families. We were about to expose it all. So they fabricated evidence to make us look like the villains," Morrison said, his anger growing. "Not just fabricated, they actually caused the incident themselves, then blamed us for it. Thousands of humans died in that attack, and it was their own people who killed them." Back in council space, Sam Davis was meeting with his most important contact yet. The individual had requested the meeting through encrypted channels, claiming to represent multiple species who were ready to break away from the council entirely. The meeting took place on a neutral space station in the border region. Sam's contact was a heavily cloaked figure who spoke through a voice modifier, but their information was incredibly detailed and accurate. 17 species are ready to declare independence, the contact said. They're just waiting for an alternative to council, membership, something that offers protection without the oppression. Sam felt his heart racing. What kind of protection are they looking for? Military defense against council retaliation, trade agreements that don't require impossible regulations, and most importantly, proof that there's a better way to organize galactic civilization. We can provide all of that, Sam replied carefully, but they would need to be willing to stand together when the time comes. They're ready. The question is, are you? When Sam's report reached Haven Station, it triggered emergency meetings throughout the Exile Alliance. Admiral Ryan Clark studied the intelligence with Colonel Wright and the other military leaders. They're planning a final solution to the human problem, Clark said grimly. A massive fleet operation to wipe out every human settlement in the outer territories. Helen Foster felt a chill run down her spine. How long do we have? 6 months, maybe less. The Council has been building up their forces for the past year. They think we're still just scattered refugees hiding in the dark. Ironheart of the Bow, Ashanti Remnant slammed her fist on the table. Let them come. We've been preparing for this fight for 3 centuries. Node Prime's mental voice reached all of them. The time for hiding is ending. But we are not the same species they exiled long ago. We have grown strong in the darkness they forced us into. Helen looked around the room at representatives from dozens of species, humans, Ashanti, echoing minds, and the other exiled civilizations they had contacted. Then it's time for Operation Dawn. It's time to show the galaxy that the forgotten can become the future. Morrison nodded grimly. The Council thinks they're hunting scattered refugees. They have no idea they're about to face an alliance that's been 50 years in the making. As alarms began sounding throughout Haven Station, signaling the beginning of their greatest gamble, Sam Davis smiled. The quiet revolution was about to become very loud indeed. Operation Dawn began at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Across 300 worlds, the largest intelligence operation in galactic history activated simultaneously. Sam Davis sat in his hidden command post on Mindor Prime, watching as his carefully built network of allies began broadcasting the truth to every corner of Council space. The evidence was overwhelming. 50 years of corruption, lies, and cover-ups flashed across communication screens throughout the galaxy. The real story of the Terra incident played on news channels that the Council had thought they controlled. Financial records showing stolen. Resources appeared on government networks. Most importantly, an invitation was broadcast to every world. Join the Terran Commonwealth and escape the Council's failures. On Thermax, Chief Engineer Maya Collins watched factory workers gather around communication screens with growing excitement when they saw the manufacturing technologies she had been secretly introducing, along with proof that the Council had been deliberately limiting their productivity. Their anger turned to action. "We're with the Commonwealth," the factory supervisor announced to his workers. "Send word to whoever is in charge. Thermax Industrial Union declares independence from the Galactic Council." Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds. The Mindorian trade houses formally announced their withdrawal from Council membership within the first hour. Colonial worlds that had been struggling under Council taxation declared their freedom. Even some core Council worlds began demanding emergency sessions to address the revelations. Trade Minister Vel Koth stood before the Mindorian Assembly, holding up the communication device that Sam had given him months earlier. "For too long, we have accepted limitations that served only the Council's power, not our prosperity. Today, we choose a different path." At Haven Station, Director Helen Foster watched the responses flood in through their quantum communication network. The screen showed green lights appearing across the galaxy as world after world chose independence. Each green light represented millions of people choosing hope over fear. 17 species in the first hour, reported Communications Officer Pete Johnson. 23 colonial clusters have declared independence. The Thermax Industrial Union is offering to produce Commonwealth ships and equipment. Admiral Ryan Clark stood in the command center of the flagship vessel New Terra, watching as the Shadow Fleet prepared for its first public appearance in 50 years. Around him, ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields and fake debris clouds were powering up their real engines and dropping their disguises. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Clark," he announced over the fleet communication system. "Today we stop hiding. Today we show the galaxy what humanity has built in the darkness." The Commonwealth fleet that emerged from the outer territories was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships incorporated technology from all the allied species, Ashanti armor plating, echoing minds communication systems, and innovations developed during 50 years of secret research. They moved with purpose and confidence, no longer refugees but liberators. Captain Morrison led the first official Commonwealth squadron into former Council space. His ship, now called the Freedom's Dawn, carried not weapons of conquest but supplies for the worlds that had declared independence. Behind him flew vessels from every species in the Exile Alliance, their hulls marked with the Commonwealth symbol, a star surrounded by interconnected circles. The climactic moment came at the former Council headquarters on Zephyr Prime. The massive crystal city that had once seemed unbreakable now flickered with unstable power. The Zephyrian government was in chaos as reports came in of massive defections throughout their territory. Admiral Clark's fleet arrived to find not an enemy armada, but a single Zephyrian vessel waiting for them. The ship transmitted a message on all frequencies. "Commonwealth vessels, this is Prince Zalthyran of the Zephyrian Royal House. I am the one you have known as the Benefactor. I formally request permission to surrender my fleet to Commonwealth authority." Jake Morrison couldn't hide his surprise as the mysterious ally finally revealed himself. "Prince Zalthyran, why are you doing this?" The Zephyrian prince's voice was tired but determined. "Because the Commonwealth represents what the Council was supposed to be. Unity through cooperation, not domination through fear. My people deserve better than the corruption our leaders have created." Within hours, the Zephyrian royal fleet had formally joined the Commonwealth. Other Council forces, seeing the writing on the wall, began requesting terms for peaceful surrender. The few ships that chose to fight found themselves hopelessly outnumbered and quickly defeated. The Vorthon Collective, true to their logical nature, sent negotiators rather than warships. Their representative, a cold-voiced artificial intelligence, called Logic Prime, met with Admiral Clark aboard the New Terra. "Our analysis indicates that resistance would be both futile and illogical," Logic Prime stated. "We request a non-aggression treaty and the right to maintain autonomy over our core worlds." "Granted," Clark replied. "The Commonwealth doesn't seek to conquer. We seek to offer choice." 5 years later, Director Helen Foster stood before the first Galactic Assembly on New Terra, humanity's new capital world. The planet had been transformed from a barren rock into a thriving center of galactic civilization, with cities that incorporated architectural styles from hundreds of different species. Representatives from over 200 species filled the Great Assembly Hall. Former enemies sat beside former victims, united by the simple principle that cooperation worked better than domination. The old council chambers on Zephyr Prime had been converted into a museum, preserving the history of what happened when fear ruled the galaxy. "Today marks the 5th anniversary of Operation Dawn," Helen announced to the assembled delegates. 5 years ago we were scattered refugees hiding in the darkness and hoping just to survive. Today we govern the largest voluntary association of worlds in galactic history. Captain Morrison, now serving as Commonwealth Explorer Corps commander, prepared his ship for another mission beyond the galaxy's edge. His crew was entirely volunteer, drawn from dozens of species who wanted to carry the Commonwealth's message of cooperation to whatever civilizations awaited among distant stars. "Ready for departure, Captain," reported his navigator, a young Ashanti warrior who had chosen exploration over revenge. "Any word from the Outer Rim expeditions?" Morrison asked. 3 new species have requested Commonwealth membership this month," the navigator replied with a smile. "Apparently news of what we've accomplished is spreading faster than our ships can travel." Dr. Kate Reynolds sat in her research facility, writing the final chapters of her historical record of humanity's rise. The elderly scientist had spent the past 5 years documenting every aspect of the transformation from exile to empire. The council made a fundamental error, she wrote. They believed that casting out their problems would make those problems disappear. Instead, they gave those problems the freedom to become solutions. The species they threw away built something better than what they lost. As New Terra's sun set over the Commonwealth capital, children from dozens of different species played, together in parks that their grandparents could never have imagined. Former slave worlds now governed themselves. Former enemies had become the closest of allies. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had once been forbidden to communicate. The forgotten exiles had indeed built an empire, but not through conquest or fear. They had built it through the simple revolutionary idea that every species deserved dignity, every world deserved choice, and every being deserved hope. Sam Davis, now serving as Commonwealth Director of Interspecies Relations, stood on his office balcony watching ships from across the galaxy arrive and depart from New Terra's spaceport. Each ship carried the Commonwealth symbol, that star surrounded by interconnected circles, but more importantly, they carried the promise that no species would ever again be forgotten or cast aside. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but perhaps the greatest wonder of all was how quickly fear could be replaced by hope when people were given the chance to choose their own future. The Commonwealth had proven that empires built on cooperation could be stronger than any empire built on conquest. And in the darkness between the stars, other civilizations were beginning to take notice of the remarkable thing that the forgotten had accomplished. The age of exile was over. The age of unity had begun.